Let's continue to talk about the presidential cabinet, and we're going to get deeper into Hamilton's economic plans. All right, a bunch of review. There it is. That's a timeline to where we are at this point. There's your three parts of the U.S. Constitution. There's the preamble, the beginning of the Constitution that explains the Constitution every single day. Article 1, 2, and 3 pretty much describe the three branches of the government. And then the first 10 amendments, also known as the Bill of Rights. These are the guarantees that the government makes to protect your specific rights. There they all are. And there's other stuff, too, that's not in here. Ninth Amendment. And then the 10th Amendment gives rights to the states. The cabinet, we talked about it. We talked about the tariffs and how the tariffs work, the enemies in the cabinet and why that was a good idea. Now, today, we're going to talk about debt when you owe money. America's future. Remember, Hamilton's trying to envision what will America be like in 50 years? What should America be like in 50 years? But one of the first issues that they're running into is a debt. We need money in this country. We need factories in this country. So where we left off, before we started to go down the road of the Constitution, the preamble, the articles. Remember, we had just won the American Revolution. That war cost us a lot of money. We borrowed money from France. We borrowed money from Spain. And we really have no way of paying that back. We had no way of paying it back during the Articles of Confederation. It was causing some issues. And if we don't pay back our loans, then we can't get future loans. And if in America can't get future loans, we can't grow the nation. We can't build roads. We can't build schools. We can't provide the services that the government should provide. We need to be able to borrow money to do that, but no one is going to loan you money if you're not paying back your first loan. Like, I need a second loan. Well, you take care of that first loan, then come talk to me. That was the problem America was in. And Hamilton, as part of Washington's cabinet, was the key guy to figure out the money situation. Think about this. Who gets loans? Do rich people get loans or do responsible people get loans? Well, technically, yes, rich people will get loans, but rich people get the loans because, well, how did they get rich in the first place? Because they were born that way. Everyone knows that. No, that's very resentful. Often, successful people become rich, and the reason that they're successful and rich was because they were responsible. This is kind of a trick question here, but we're going to get back to this whole idea of responsibility, and that's what Hamilton is going to hammer away at. So America needs to be able to borrow money, and to be able to borrow money, we need to pay off our current loans, and we need to prove to the banks in Europe that we are responsible. Because we have to pay for a military. Remember, we got American Indians that are getting armed by the British. The British technically haven't even left. The Spanish are on the outskirts. We've got the Barbary pirates in the Middle East attacking and enslaving American sailors. It's a bad situation. And the only way to solve every single one of those problems, just like solving every single problem today, is money. We need some money. So we got to be able to borrow the money to do it. We got to be able to build roads to grow our economy. You're not going to have this manufacturing-based economy in the North if you can't move the manufactured goods. And then law and order, justice, courts, jails, police officers, just things that make America normal. All that's going to cost money. Again, who gets the money? Yeah, well, this is technically a responsible person ends up being the rich person, but we've got to prove that we are responsible. Just like you, if you want to be able to borrow money from the bank, well, you can't just become rich all of a sudden, but you can become responsible. So the situation that we're looking at after the American Revolution, after the war, starting the Constitution and starting under the Washington presidency is all the states are in major debt because they had to pay for soldiers. They had to pay for guns. They just paid for a war. Now, the South was in the better situation. They didn't owe that much money. And the reason they didn't owe that much money is because much of the fighting, many of the battles and the wars were not necessarily in the South. The big bill for the American Revolution was in the Northeast, in the mid-colonies. They owed a lot more money. They had larger war debts. The South probably would have been able to pay off their war debts individually. Now remember, these are individual states with individual debts. They weren't really a united nation. We still will never really be united as one until about 50 years down the road in this class. But right now, kind of separate situation. The North, that's where they owed the most money because that's where most of the battles were. And remember, when you can't pay off your loan, then you can't get future loans. And these are the people that really need the money. They need to borrow more money so they can build that manufacturing base, but they're already in too much debt. We've got to be able to solve this problem. So Hamilton's plan is going to be the individual state debt. Let's all make that one national debt. All the states, just like this, boom, you owe no more money. Just like that. Hamilton's plan, like, wait a second, can he do that? Yeah, technically he can. So he's going to basically absolve all their debt. Not really absolve it. He's going to say, hey, New York, you owe $10 million. Guess what? You're good to go. We will take that $10 million of debt. Massachusetts, you owe $50 million or whatever it was. You don't owe that money to the bank anymore. We'll pay it for you. You're good. The only situation, though, is here's the deal. We will pay off your debt. So you're good. You're clean. We'll take everyone's debt, but you're all going to have to slowly, eventually, and forever pay taxes that will go to lowering that debt. So eventually, we'll take taxes from every one of you, and we'll pay off the debt that we took from all of you, and we will be responsible. And we'll prove that, hey, banks in Europe, we've got a plan. The national government's going to take everybody's debt, and we're going to tax people and slowly pay it off. And as we're slowly paying that off, can you give us another loan? You don't have to worry about the 13 different colonies and these 13 different debts, and one state's responsible and one state's irresponsible, and they owe a lot more than them, and they owe a little bit less than them. And here's the deal. Just one nation, one debt. We're slowly paying off that debt. I'm slowly paying off my car payment, bank. Do you mind loaning me some money to build a house? Look at my car payment. I'm slowly paying it off every month. I'm being responsible. You can trust me with another loan. That's the Hamilton plan. The only problem is the South's like, whoa. We were going to pay off our loan on our own. We didn't owe that much money. It was going to be fine. But now all of a sudden, the South is going to have to pay off basically the North's debt. The South is being forced to pay for the bills of Massachusetts. Virginia is paying the bills of New York. North Carolina is paying for the bills of New Jersey. How about North Carolina pays North Carolina's debt and we call it a day? No, what's going to happen is North Carolina, you're not only going to pay for New Jersey and their debts, but you're going to be taxed forever. And the South says, I don't know about joining this United States. If we got to pay for the North's death, yes, the North's death or debt, then we're going to need something in return. And the bargain is, all right, we will move the U.S. Capitol from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C., where it remains today. That's the bargain. Another compromise. Yay! Personally, I would say keep it in Philadelphia. That's all fine. Let me keep my money. Well, whatever. This is what they decided. So now that we're responsible, Europe can start sending money to America, building our military, law and order, structure, institutions, roads, you name it. The government can do what the government does today and borrow money to get that moving. Sidestep, but still connected to what we're talking about, banks start the economy. The economy is anywhere things are bought and sold and produced, buying and selling. It's a giant marketplace. And for that marketplace to work, buying, selling, producing goods, coming up with ideas for goods, getting the goods to people, all the different things of just getting a pizza to someone, making the pizza, creating the pizza, getting all the resources of the pizza, delivering the pizza, consuming the pizza, buying the pizza, having the job to make your money so that you can go buy pizzas, all those things, that's the economy. But a lot of where that's all going to start is with money, and much of the money is controlled by banks. So to give you an example, so jump starts the economy. How's it work? So banks can loan money to the government. The government then can provide services or jobs. Like when they build a road, for example, they're going to have to hire a worker. That worker is going to spend money at the grocery store. And by spending money at the grocery store is going to have to hire workers. So that's more money to this lady. The grocery store buys their food from a farmer. That means money's going to go to the farmer. The farmer has to buy a tractor. That means the farmer's going to spend money on the factory that builds tractors. And you'll see, hey, the bank got the money to the government starts delivering the money, and the money goes throughout the economy, and the economy will grow. And all these factory workers will have jobs. And she spends money to build a house, and it just goes up and up and up. So the bank really is a starting point to get the economy growing. Now, let me present also, because if you look here, it looks like, the government is doing everything. That's definitely a Keynesian way of presenting the economy. Democrats and Keynesian economic believers will definitely prefer this. But so I don't want to get attacked by more conservative Chicago school, Milton type, or even the Austrian economics guys. So yes, this is one view. That, yes, the government can borrow money and stimulate the economy. That's your Keynesian style economics. But also, factories can borrow money, businesses can borrow money, individuals can borrow money that also stimulate the economy. This would be much more aligned with Milton and with the Austrian school. So I just want to make sure that we're presenting both sides, and I want people to watch the video and say, oh, government just needs to borrow money and create jobs. That's one way. Usually the free market can borrow money and create jobs. It's typically a little bit more efficient and effective. Now the Keynesians are going to start attacking me. Oh, you hate big government. Well, I presented both sides. The defense rests. National bank. So what is up with a national bank? And remember, America's future through the eyes of Alexander Hamilton is a manufacturing-based economy. And one of the things that's going to get this going, remember, banks start the economy. So we need a national bank to jumpstart the national economy. Ooh. Remember, rivals, Jefferson, who's over here, and Hamilton, who's over here, disagree on just about everything, including a national bank and including the interpretation of the Constitution. One reads the Constitution one way, one reads the Constitution the other way. Isn't it the same exact document? Yes. It's the same exact document, but one is able to get a completely different meaning from it than another. Sounds crazy, but not really, considering that we do the same exact thing today where people find a way to see. Anyway, we'll not even get into that. So we're talking about how they interpret or read the Constitution. This is going to set up the story of the national bank, and it's going to have a larger implication on U.S. history. Jefferson, when he reads the Constitution, remember, he's the agrarian guy, he's the agriculture-based guy, disagrees with Hamilton. If it's not written in the Constitution, then we can't do it. It has to be enumerated in the U.S. Constitution. That specific power, role, responsibility, duty has to say in the Constitution, the government can do this, the government can do that. And if it's not written in there, then the government cannot do it. Because Jefferson believes in a strict interpretation, because he believes in limited government. The key way to limit the government's power then and today is by making the government follow the government, which is the Constitution. The government must follow the Constitution. And the best way to do it is, if it doesn't say you can do it in the Constitution, then the government cannot do it. Limits. We do not want an oppressive government. We do not want a government with unlimited power, because then they'll abuse us. That's Jefferson. We don't want kings. Hamilton on there says, hey, does it say we can't? Well, you can't argue a negative, but whatever. That's the trick that he pulls. And he says, hey, it doesn't say we can't. If it doesn't say no banks, then I guess we can do it. But that's not really a logical argument. You can't argue a negative. There's a lot of things that it does not specifically say we can't do. The Constitution doesn't say you can't high-five aliens. Okay, well, it didn't say I can't high-five aliens, so I gotta. That's a terrible example. The government doesn't say you can't stick carrots up your nose. I don't know. This is just what's in my head right now. Why is that in my head right now? Loose interpretation. You can stretch it out. You can read between the lines is what Alexander Hamilton says. Jefferson says, dude, it's not written. Hamilton's like, well, I can kind of make sense that they were kind of leaning. The founding fathers kind of believe you are one of the founding fathers. We are the founding fathers. We wrote this document like 5 days ago, and we didn't say we could start a bank. And he's like, well, if you read it loose, you can interpret that the founding fathers were really trying to say this. We know what we were trying to say because we said it. What do you mean? We were in the meetings. We were writing this document. What do you mean loose interpretation? If you wanted to put the bank thing in, where were you 5 days ago when we were writing this document? You should have put the bank thing in. There's no, well, we were kind of trying to, what are you talking about? Anyway, Jefferson's losing his mind, and Hamilton's over here, as always, just having these theoretical, crazy conversations, and he continues to go and says, look, all right, here's the deal. Loose interpretation, remember? I think we can start a bank, and I'm going to try to make some sort of argument that makes it work. When the government taxes people, where are we supposed to put our money at, Jefferson? Huh? We got all this tax money. What are we supposed to do? Put it under our bed? We need a national bank to store the money. Now, the Constitution does not say anything about creating a bank, and you can look in it today. There's nothing that says the government can create a bank, but it doesn't say they can't. That's not an excuse. You can't use that logic. But it doesn't say they can't. Jefferson's response is, well, you just put it in a smaller bank. You don't need a national bank. There are banks all throughout America. Our government can put the money in all the different banks. You don't need to create a national bank. We don't have the power to do that. Just put it in another bank. You don't have to put it on your bed. Hamilton says, look, sometimes the U.S. needs more money than taxes. In a moment's notice, sometimes we go to war. There's some sort of emergency, and the government needs to desperately borrow money quickly. There are times where the government needs cash fast. How's it? 1877 need cash fast? I don't know how that goes. So they need a national bank. Jefferson's response was, you can just borrow from the smaller banks. There's tons of smaller banks. Oh, you need money real quick? Just go to the payday loans, whatever you got to do. We don't need to create a national bank. What are you talking about? And it's not that we don't need to. We're not allowed. Well, it doesn't say we can't, but it doesn't say you can either. Well, where do the regular banks get their money then, Jefferson? The banks have to borrow money from somebody. And the most logical way would have all the banks borrow from one big bank, one central bank, when we could call that the national bank. The Constitution does not say we can create a bank. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Well, I don't care how many reasons you think that we need one, and you can make a million reasons of, oh, it sounds like a good idea, but it doesn't matter because we don't have the power to do it. Strict interpretation. I understand the need for limited government, T-Jeff. I get it, bro. I understand what you're saying. I like limited government too. I don't want a king either, but sometimes if you're doing too much, we need the bank. You're so strict. You're so square. You're always following the rules. Sometimes you got to bend the rules a little bit to do what you need to do. And that's what Hamilton says. Hamilton will create, invent, come up with the elastic clause. And if you go to Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, what it says with this brilliant idea, if you look close in the details, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, it says that the government, the legislative branch, can make laws. And specifically what it says, they can make all laws which shall be necessary and proper. Well, is the bank necessary? Hamilton's like, I made a pretty good argument that it's necessary, that we need it. Is it proper? Well, it doesn't seem like it's a bad idea. It doesn't seem evil. It doesn't seem rotten. It seems proper. It seems right. It seems like we need it. So guess what? We can make a law that creates a bank. And guess what? We can make any law as long as we argue that it's necessary and proper. We can make any law that's necessary or proper based on the preamble. And the preamble says that we, the people, have given the government the power to do these things. And one of the things that we, the people, have given the government the power to do is promote the general welfare. So if the job of the government is to promote the general welfare, can we make a law that creates a bank? Well, does it promote the general welfare? Does it make our lives better? Hamilton argues that it makes our lives better. Yeah, but can you justify it? Do we need it? Yeah, I can show you some examples how we need a bank and how it's proper. And that's it. That's your elastic clause from Hamilton, which has led to a lot of craziness in our world. Thank you, Alexander Hamilton, for that loose interpretation. But we basically take promoting the general welfare. As long as the government, the legislative branch, can argue, well, I think that this law is necessary and it helps us out. We kind of need it and it helps the world out. Then they can do it. They can basically justify doing all kinds of crazy things. The legislative branch can justify all kinds of laws by stretching it out. Like, does it say they can make a bank? No. Does it say they can make laws? Yes. As long as those laws promote the general welfare is the argument. Does the bank promote the general welfare? Does the bank make our lives better? Yeah, I guess kind of. It can let the government get money when they need it. It can make getting money to the banks a little bit easier. And so now the idea is that, look, it doesn't have to necessarily be written in the Constitution. It doesn't have to be enumerated is the argument of Hamilton. Jefferson still thinks everything has to be written down. Hamilton says, nah, it doesn't necessarily have to be written down. We can always stretch things around. That is the elastic clause.